it's measured on the person whose life has been taken.
And if you can't afford to pay that?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. That's interesting. So,
I'm thinking from a fiqh perspective of preserving as opposed to pure justice. So, for example, if a person who cannot afford it has committed a crime either by accident or intentionally, can't afford to pay that blood money, consequently, if they were forced to do so, their life and their family's life could be destroyed. So there's a greater consequence. And I'm just wondering.
yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting is if it's accidental death, if it's accidental killing, the person who accidentally killed the person doesn't actually pay. It's their family that pays. This is an interesting rule. It's weird, right? Why is it the family that pays and not me, the individual who did it accidentally? One reason may be because it sort of breaks the cycle of revenge. So it kind of disassociates me from the crime because it was accidental, right? So it kind of takes me out of the equation, kind of just cuts off right away like any idea that I'm going to be the target of revenge, and so my family kind of takes over and pays. My guess is that's an interesting question. I'll look into it. I don't know how I could get you the answer, but it's, as with all things in Islamic law, there's usually more than one answer. But my guess would be, and this is just a guess, my guess would be that this would be the public law duty of the ruler/judge, the ruling authority. They would pay the blood money because in instances when, in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when they can't find the murderers, the Prophet eventually just pays the money out of the sadaqah camels, out of the public wealth, basically. So my guess would be that if the person is bankrupt or like they have no property or something, that it would be the government that paid the money.
Shall we go to written questions?
In that situation, if they have property, by virtue of selling the property, they're going to the family will become homeless.
Well, yeah, but remember, that's an intentional killing. So you shouldn't have intentionally killed somebody.
Okay.
I mean, if you think you can intentionally kill somebody and your family's not going to suffer, you should rethink it.
Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the written questions. At the start you mentioned...
Wait, let me read these things. Why are you reading them?
Because I'm I'm censorship.
Why don't I get to censor them too?
Because I live in this, because my... this is siyasa Sharia.
Okay, go ahead.
At the start you mentioned under Ridda that if an individual leaves the religion, he cannot preach against the religion. Doesn't this contradict a key human right, which is freedom of speech?
Yes, it depends. What do you mean by freedom of speech? Like, can I say a bunch of salacious, horrible stuff about a member of the royal family?
Probably.
No, I can't actually. Or can I? No, I can be sued for defamation. Or can I write it? I might be sued for libel, correct? Can I? Oh, I'm in England. I might as well. Can I go and preach about how people shouldn't vote? Can I go and talk about how I think it's, I don't want, my kids to be taught certain things in schools? Can I go and talk about the obligation to have a caliphate? I mean, it's starting to get into the area where, like, actually governments do regulate what people can say, right? And if you're interested in this, I recommend reading my article on apostasy, which is called The Issue of Apostasy in Islam on yaqeeninstitute.org, where I talk about European Court of Human Rights and some of the rulings they've issued about freedom of expression and public order. Usually when governments start to, at least in the European context, not in the American context, in the United States, alhamdulillah, we actually do have very, very strong regime of freedom of speech. I can't believe I'm like cheerleading for the US right now, but I'm going to cheerlead on this issue. We have very strong freedom of religion protections, and very strong freedom of speech expressions. If you're going to tell me a school in the United States is going to try and teach kindergartners about things like sexuality and transgender stuff like that. First of all, education is done locally at county level, not at national level. It's not centralized. And people you can withdraw your children from these types of classes. So there's strong freedom of religious practice and freedom of conscience, and also freedom of speech. The government, when Terry Jones, remember that pastor who was had the trial for the Quran and he decided he would burn the Quran, remember that guy? And everyone was upset, why doesn't the US government stop this guy? The US government cannot stop him. They cannot stop him from engaging in freedom of expression unless it's imminent incitement to lawless acts. Imminent incitement to lawless acts, which is the Brandenburg Rule, from the Brandenburg ruling of the Supreme Court. But in Europe, you have this concept of public order, which is brought up a lot to justify not letting a comedian perform in France. The comedian Dieudonné Mbalabala, remember him? Dieudonné Mbalabala was prevented from performing because his performance was going to cause risk to public order and violence. Of course, Charlie Hebdo can publish what they want, even though we actually know that that leads to violence and breaking of public order, but who said this stuff was fair? So my argument is that all states have limits to freedom of expression, whether it's pornography or libel or treason or imminent threat to public order. If the UK can limit public expression based on things like British values, you've all heard these discussions, right? So there are these British values, which are what? Respect for freedom, democracy, rule of law, and respect for others, right? Isn't that, what is the, there are 4 of them. Who can tell me these? Come on, folks.
Fish and chips.
British values, there's like 4 of them. Somebody look it up. But the point is, if the British government can engage in restrictions of speech based on notions of British values, then another state can, in theory, engage in restriction of speech based on its internal values. And if its internal values are informed by Islam, then actually the European Court of Human Rights has a ruling on this that upheld a Turkish government ruling, I think in the early 2000s, restricting speech that was considered to be offensive to the Prophet. Because European Court of Human Rights upheld this ruling, which is interesting. You can see this if you go to my article on apostasy, which I have this all footnoted.
Would you mind elaborating on that apostasy point? You spoke, I think in your article, speak about pre-modern states having that overlap between the political and the...
Man, I feel like I'm a puppet here.
No.
You want to...
Because those are the topics I wanted you to speak about on the presentation more. So that's the last one. There's one more actually after that, but this will be good stuff.
I mean, I think I already talked about this with Sayyid Amir Ali.
You did, you introduced
Yeah,
it.
so I mean that if states have a right to restrict speech based on public order, then what happens if that public order is religiously informed? By the way, this isn't it's not a hypothetical. Why is it that in France, a woman wearing niqab or a burkini, like wearing a headscarf, is a threat to public order on the beach, but nuns wearing a hat covering their head are not a threat to public order on the beach? Because public order is religiously informed. It's not neutral, right? France is a Catholic country, not a Muslim country. So certain religious traditions are going to be more kind of embedded and protected by a legal order than others. I don't think that's fair, but that's a fact. So if that's the case, then in an Islamic setting, you can imagine a situation in which a public order is inflected by Muslim sensibilities. And that would be completely within the kind of a European liberal pattern of thinking. It's not an American pattern of thinking, by the way. Other questions?
During the Prophet ﷺ's time, how many cases were there in which hudud punishment were implemented, or more generally during the time of the Salaf?
That's impossible to answer. I think there's 6 instances of stoning in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. There was a few instances of alcohol consumption in the time of the companions. one case of qadhaf that I can think of, and I can't think of any qat. I can't think of qat yad al-saraq. But this is a good question. I would require more study.
In your opinion, where, when has there been proper implementation of the Sharia, and building on that, do you need a Khalifa to implement the Sharia?
What does Khalifa mean?
I assume the institution of Khilafah maybe.
I mean, I think there's a lot of debate about what Khilafah means. I mean, for a lot of scholars like the Juvaini, Khalifa is just the person who's in charge, even if it's some like Turkic warlord who can't read. So, I mean, I think that, so that's like saying, do you need a ruler to have implementation of the Sharia? Or do you need a, yes, in theory you do, right? But also you don't. And there's books of law will talk about this, where fiqh will talk about this. Like if you have a situation where you're living in like the desert and the edge of the world and there's no real law, like who's going to implement had punishments, who's going to oversee these things? And it's essentially like local elders, whoever the most respected people in the community are. So in one sense, you don't need any kind of formal government structure to have Sharia. But in the way that it's generally understood as functioning as a system, yes, you would have to have some kind of executive authority. Where was Sharia implemented legitimately or correctly? I mean, you could just, look at Islamic history. I mean, as far as I know, all of Islamic history, it was legitimately. You could point to instances where you thought something was wrong, or instances where you thought abuse happened, or you could look at one time and place or one era where you thought that there was a pattern of abuse or a pattern of misapplication. But I think, like as a whole, that would be like saying, where is like American law implemented in America? I mean, it's just, you could say, well, I think that there's some instances where values are betrayed or where the Constitution is betrayed or not. But that doesn't kind of undermine or remove the overall functioning of that system. And of course, where you could just certainly say where it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply in countries that have zero elements of Sharia in their legal system. So a country like Turkey that has zero Sharia law in its law obviously doesn't have any Sharia law. France, well, it depends. Like England or the UK might have allow Sharia finance or allow admission of things like mahr agreements and things like that. So in a way, they're actually incorporating. There is Sharia present in England or in the U.S., but other countries might be much more hostile to that kind of thing.
Just on that point, maybe, what about the idea of the false claimants to the Sharia? So the idea of ISIS maybe claiming that they are the Sharia, and they will use that as a narrative, because you said, or they'll say that we are Khilafah. So what gives them illegitimacy in comparison to anyone else?
I mean, would any of you want to live in ISIS country? I mean, what makes them illegitimate is they massacred an enormous number of Muslims. They literally massacred. They're so intense that even Al-Qaeda was like, whoa, you guys are too intense. Even these Abu Muhammad Maqdisi and all these Salafi jihadi ideologues were like, hey, you guys really need to chill out. Stop killing some people. Stop killing all these Shia. They literally treat the Shia were mushrikun to them. The Sunnis who didn't join ISIS were murtadun, right? The non-Muslim minorities who had lived for 1,400 years under the protection of Muslim states as dhimmis, suddenly that protection disappeared, even though there's a clear principle, dhimmat Allahi wahida, right? The protection and responsibility of God is one. So it doesn't matter if the Ottoman Empire leaves and another state of Iraq comes, the protection of these minorities remains. They completely violated this. So what more do you have to have than saf dima al-Muslimin? They shed enormous amounts of blood of innocent Muslims for no reason, and broke the agreements of protection that non-Muslims had enjoyed and come to rely upon for no reason, other than just utter narrow-minded hatred. So that's if nobody in the entire Muslim world thinks you're legitimate and what you're doing is right, except the scholars that you pay, then how can you be a legitimate claimant to leadership? I mean, can you think of something where like the supreme ruler of Iran, the Saudi Mufti, the most awful like ulama sultan in Egypt, the most hardcore Muslim Brotherhood in Britain, like all these people, Salafi, Mikbalafi, Goofy Sufi, they all agree that this group is absolutely either heretical or kafir, right? Either heretical or they've actually entered kufr in the case of ISIS. How can that, if these people won't agree on anything else, how can this group be a legitimate claimant to leadership?
You mentioned the idea that there are certain elements of Sharia law that are being practiced in Britain right now that would send palpitations through the heart of many Islamophobes in this country.
Well, it would send palpitations to the hearts of Islamophobes in the US, but those people need to wakey, eggs and bakey. I don't know what to tell you. First of all, oh my God, I'm praying. That's Sharia. Oh my God, I'm fasting. That's Sharia. Oh my God, I'm treating my wife with respect. That's Sharia. Oh my, et cetera, et cetera. Oh my God, I gave mahr to my wife. That's Sharia. I mean, oh my God, I'm arranging my inheritance, which is my right according to American law, along the lines of happen to be Hanbali madhab. Oh my God, that's Sharia. Oh my God, I have a contract with Sufyan about our business dealings that's Sharia compliant. Oh my God, that's Sharia. I mean, I don't want to pay interest on my mortgage. This is, so you just don't like things that happen to align with what Muslims want? That's nonsensical. You're going to go and make me not do all these different things? For what reason? Just because they align with my religion and I feel that they're part of my religious teachings? In addition, if you deal with another country like Saudi Arabia or Iran or the UAE or Malaysia or something that has elements of Sharia law in their legal systems, and then they have business arrangements or you have some issue of shared jurisdiction or something, you've already acknowledged, because of multilateral legal agreements, you've acknowledged the validity of their of these agreements and of these contracts and things like that. And they may be actually held. These disputes may be adjudicated in the Dubai forum for arbitration or in a Malaysian court. And unless you want to just pretend that all these other countries in the world and these other people's laws mean nothing, and you're just going to have no interaction with them, you have to acknowledge the fact that your legal system is in dialogue with them.
I really wanted you to speak about this. I loved your talk that you did. No, but this is linked to what I wanted to speak about in the talk.
No.
I'll come back to this. But you spoke about...
I'm the puppet. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
But I think it's now, whatever, the talk that you gave about the Muslim question, that people are so uncomfortable with the Muslim ideas because we cause them anxiety in the fragility of their own worldview and their own understanding.
Yeah, so there's a very good book I really recommend. It's called On the Muslim Question by Anne Norton. She's a wonderful author. She's a political philosopher, a history, sort of political historian. She herself is, she's a committed liberal. What she sees in the way that Muslims in Islam are treated in the West is essentially a consistent failure of liberal ideals. And what she talks about, she titles her book as an intentional echo of Marx's On the Jewish Question. Because what she shows, and what has long been discussed in the case of Jews, and she shows in the case of Muslims, is that minorities, Jews and then Muslims, they cause anxiety in the Western tradition, especially Western Europe, because Western Europe does not know how to deal with difference. It cannot actually deal with internal difference. And Jews and Muslims remind Westerners of their own failures to deal with difference. And what you often see is that the things that Western sort of Islamophobia or anti-Semitism hates about Jews or Muslims are the very things that the West is itself guilty of. It's, Muslims oppress minorities. Okay, how many genocides did Muslims engage in? What kind of racial anti-Semitism did Muslims engage in? None. I mean, statistically zero. You guys know Muhammad Assad, right?
Yeah.
What was his religion before he became Muslim?
He was a Jew.
Do you have any problem with Muhammad Assad? No. Abdullah bin Salam, companion of the Prophet. What religion is him before he became Muslim?
Was a Jew.
Jewish. Did they have any problem with him? No, right? Muslims don't have problems with Jews. Muslims have problems with Zionism. Okay? There's a great essay by David Wasserstein, who's a professor at Vanderbilt University, How Islam Saved the Jews. Medieval Judaism flourished and survived under Muslim rule. And by the way, Jewish law was highly influenced by Islamic law.
Maimonides.
Yeah, Jewish theology was strongly influenced by Islamic theology, and they were in dialogue with one another, and both influenced by the Greco-Roman traditions. So, who is it that? Which tradition is it that first expelled all Jews and Muslims, then expelled anybody who was even descended from Jews and Muslims, even if those people had converted to Catholicism?
Spanish.
Yeah, 1525 expels all the Moors, all the Muslims from, except if you convert. You have to convert, okay, you can stay. 1609 expels all their descendants, even if they converted to Christianity. That is racial anti-Semitism, people. This simply does not exist. I can think of one instance in my mind, one instance where something like this happened to a person in Islamic history. There may be more examples. I only know of one. Within, not just in the 20th century has there been genocide of minorities in Europe, in Western Europe, but within my lifetime, there is genocide of the other within Europe. Bosnian Muslims, to which Western Europe had exactly jack squat response. I mean, this is what, again, I don't mean to wave the American flag here, but who went in and saved Bosnian Muslims? Right? I mean, think about that. The people who sit around and talk about never again, it happened right in front of their faces. So who is it who, Muslims, they don't allow freedom of speech. They don't allow freedom of speech. They got problems with it. They just don't get it. Je suis Charlie. Let's all walk around with pens to show we believe in freedom of speech. Who do they defend? Whose rights of freedom of speech do they defend? Do they defend Muslims' rights of freedom of speech? No. When a Muslim comes out and says, I think homosexuality is a sin, or I think the Israeli government is oppressive and deprives Palestinians of their rights, are those people, do they face consequences for those statements? Oh yeah. Right? By the way, it's not just, and this is, Ann Norton goes into this at length, it's not just your freedom of speech, it's your freedom to remain silent. Hey, Muslim, you're going to come on TV. I want you to condemn, you got to condemn, right? You got to condemn a bunch of stuff. First, I want you to condemn ISIS. Then I want you to condemn Hamas. Then I want you, here's a list of things I want you to condemn. Do we ask, do regular Europeans or white people in the United States have to condemn things? No. By the way, your freedom of speech is also your freedom not to speak. So the people whose alleged freedom of speech is under attack and needs to be defended are the powerful majority, and the people whose we don't talk about as having freedom of speech and who we happily deprive of or restrict in their speech rights are the embattled, besieged minorities, poor, underserved, underrepresented Muslim minorities in European countries or in the United States. So that is like you can see whose rights are being protected. When do we have the march about with pens? Do we talk about when Muslims are not allowed to speak? We do with this when it's white people who are not allowed to speak, or when white people are threatened in their rights to speak. So this is these are the points that Ann Norton makes. I really recommend reading this book. It's excellent. It's very readable. It's maybe, getting on 10 years old now, but it's a superb book on the Muslim question.
We can go to these questions now. Does Islam have any concept of both criminal and civil law?
Yeah, Islam has a concept of criminal. Again, it's not like Muslims. You can't sort of go back to the 10th century and say, this word is criminal law, this word is civil law. but you have the notion of the rights of human beings. They have rights with each other. And then you have a notion of like public haq am, public law, public rights, and rights of God that kind of translates kind of into criminal law, I'd say, or public law, criminal law. And then the rights of the servants, the slaves of God, is sort of like private law. But there's some blurring of lines there, but I think they're useful. It's a useful heuristic device, if not a direct counterpart.
If you follow a school of thought, but the court judges you according to a different school, are you forgiven? Oh, wow. Yeah. You mean in a dispute? I don't know. I think this person thinks if you...
No, so, I mean, that's an interesting question, right? So let's say I'm a Hanbali and you're a Maliki, right? And we have a property dispute.
Hanafi.
Okay, you're a Hanafi, right? We have a property dispute. So you're in a city like Cairo in the year 1300. Cairo has Maliki courts, Shafi'i courts, Hanbali courts, Hanafi courts. Which court do we go to? At some point in Islamic history, it's kind of like whoever can bring the issue to court quickest just gets to choose the forum. Or sometimes it's the madhab of the defendant. So you see this, there's some suggestion, I think, in Islamic history that there's a strong preference for the court of the defendant. You also see this actually in American civil law as well. If you have a choice of law problem, that there's a kind of preference for the defendant. But just like in Islamic law as well, in American law, the choice of forum is kind of based on who can sort of maneuver most effectively in the legal system, whether it's federal law or state law in the United States. Why is there kind of a preference for the defendant? Because remember, the presumption is always of innocence. So the defendant it's always the burden is on the person bringing the claim or the plaintiff to establish that a wrong has been done. So the defendant always enjoys the presumption of innocence.
I think we'll finish with this question. I think it's an interesting one. Does the concept of undercover operations to catch a suspected criminal exist, I'm assuming Islamically, and how does punishment apply in such a case? If yes, and linked to that, would modern technology affect the requirement for witnesses in cases like adultery?
Yeah, so I don't know about the first part of undercover stuff. That's interesting.
I think there's a story of Sayyidina Umar that someone sort of breaks into a house and catches somebody drinking.
Yeah, but that's not undercover. That's breaking into a house.
Oh, but they jump over they can hear women sort of singing inside, and they just assume when they sort of jump in. And
yeah, but undercover is when I pretend to be part of the party. I'm like, hey guys, where's the wine? That's undercover.
Could that be linked though, sort of?
So that's a case, that's a prohibition on what's called tajassus, or like spying. So you can't do that. And Umar bin al-Khattab is the one who does that, and then he gets reprimanded and he leaves.
Yeah.
So that's not because, but there's a difference. Like, so let's say,
like a Muslim government listening in.
Yeah. So let's see. I hear, I'm outside a house and I hear like a child being tortured. It's like, no, stop torturing me. Oh, please, cry, cry, cry. Ah, that's different because there's right of human being, haq adam, haq al-ibad is being infringed upon. What you can't do is the hudud. You can't go into someone's house and be like, oh, I caught you drinking. Because remember, you're not supposed to catch, you're trying to avoid this. So you're not supposed to do tajassus. Tajassus is to like enter into someone's affairs. So this actually comes up a lot in the notion of like kind of Me Too cases and rape accusations. And there's some misunderstandings here because if a woman says, this Muslim guy is sexually abusing me or sexually assaulted me, you can't say like, oh, you have to have 4 witnesses. Oh, you're supposed to do satr of this person. No, you do satr if there's no victim. You don't do, if there's a victim, that means someone's rights have been infringed upon. 100%. And that's why, by the way, rape in Islamic law, if you admit to raping somebody as a guy, let's say, you are going to get punished for zina because you've just admitted to zina. But if you're the victim, a woman, didn't commit zina because you were forced to do it. It wasn't your choice. Yeah. You don't need 4 witnesses to prove that rape occurred because rape isn't zina. Rape is an assault on a body. It's called jinaya. It's an assault on someone's body. So you just need the proof you would need to do a regular assault, which depending on the situation would be like 2 upstanding witnesses or 1 witness and circumstantial evidence, or just a lot of circumstantial evidence depending on the school of thought and the time. But again, the person, let's say the guy who gets convicted isn't going to get stoned. The guy is just going to have to pay compensation to the woman for her injuries, and then he can get ta'zir punishment for his infringements. If you're interested in this topic, I wrote an article, it's called, on emanwire.com, it's called The Presumption of Innocence When Too Many Innocents Go Unheard, and it deals with all this issue of rape in the Islamic tradition.
The second part is particularly interesting because the idea of having witnesses within Islam.
Oh, so another thing is
like deepfake and stuff now. So video technology, Islam, how would
yeah?
Islam
So
see that?
with things like hudud crimes, you don't accept video testimony in hudud crimes because can videos be faked?
Yeah.
Yes. So the second there's any shubha, any ambiguity, immediately you throw the hudud crime out, it drops down to the ta'zir level. That's why I want to write a paper on this. You can't get convicted of HUD for being a porn star.
Okay.
Why not?
Because video evidence doesn't count.
It doesn't meet the burden of evidence.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, you have video, but that's not how things work. I'm sorry, man. You got to do puppet master for me. I'm going to talk about what I want. If you go on the set of a porn movie, are there more than 4 people? They're not upstanding. If you work on a porn set, you're by definition not upstanding. You won't be accepted as a witness.
On that note, I think we'll close the version.
Yes, Sufyan.
The driver sort of waiting for me.
You talked how Sharia has kind of evolved with time, and the process of modernity has had its effect on how Muslim governments or states have kind of altered or adapted Sharia to be fit for time. I get a sense that a lot of the questions about Sharia from Muslims are about identity and feeling that, was there a golden time of when Sharia was true?
Yeah.
Do you think that with modernity, it's natural for this sort of, say, the removing of hudud, and not to deny that they exist, but perhaps they're not applicable or...
Simply leave them in like a kind of a symbolic role, yeah.
Do you think that's a natural evolution and true to the spirit of what Sharia is? Or do you think that is kind of a concession to modernity and modernity?
So I think a really interesting area to look at is Ottoman reforms of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Because on the one hand, the Ottomans are clearly under pressure from European powers. So in 1855, the Ottomans, there's the 1856, it's the Hatta Humayun of I think it's the Hatta Sharif or the Hatta Humayun. It's the second declaration of the Tanzimat era, where they basically eliminate religious discrimination within the empire. And they didn't do that because one day the Ottoman sultans woke up and said, "Truly, do not want to discriminate anymore." It's because they had just been saved in the Crimean War by the British and the French from the Russians. The British and French said, "Okay, time to pay up. No more religious discrimination against non-Muslims." How did they justify that? Like they say, no more jizya. They say, one of the opinions in the Hanafi madhab, I think it's Muhammad ibn Hassan Shaybani, says that the ruler can choose not to levy the jizya because the Umar bin Khattab chose not to levy the jizya on the Banu Taghlib Christian tribe. So what they're doing is fully legitimate. Like everything checks out. What's their motivation? Clearly they're acting, there's external stimuli. But enough of I think that case shouldn't blind us to, I think, what was the majority mindset of Ottoman reformers in the 19th and early 20th century, is that they felt, if you had gone and told them, "Hey, are you guys like really Islamic in what you're doing?" They would have been like, "Yeah, of course. We want to have, like, look how well Europe is functioning. Look how wonderful their train systems are and their economies are. Like, they have all these great technologies. So we want to use the same things in our legal system." But it's not. We're not changing. We're not abandoning the Sharia. We're just, instead of having these books that have multiple options that are really complicated, we're just going to give one option and have a code that more people can use, so it's easier to train judges, so you can have more courts, more access to justice for a larger population, et cetera, et cetera. Why wouldn't we want to have that? So it would be like me saying, is your iPhone Islamic? Or is your pen Islamic? Well, what do you mean? This is, like, what do you want me to use? A fountain pen? I guess, like, if I were, like a traditionalist in the Miriamiyya Tariqa or something, I would say, a fountain pen, like the noon of the fountain, or like, the flow of the pen ink is like the traditional flow of God's commands onto earth or something. You could make that argument, but I mean, we all pretty much accept that like pens are just pieces of technology we use to improve our lives. There's no Islamic plus or minus value here. So I think that's how a lot of these reformers were thinking about legal reforms at the time. But it's tough because like both things are present. But just because both are present doesn't mean that we should just assume that there's always this sort of inauthentic external Western motivation to these reforms. So I think that you actually see a process of like indigenous, authentic, the reform of the technologies of law and administration of law. And I think one area where you do see like a clear betrayal is that removal of hudud, simply because Muslim rulers had always celebrated and been celebrated for establishing the hudud of God. Doesn't mean that they actually ever carried them out, but it was like this, it was a statement about the rule of God being in place, even if it wasn't going to be carried out. So if it's not going to be carried out and you take it away, that's equally a statement about sort of submission to a worldview which doesn't care about the boundaries of God, as understood in the Islamic tradition. That way, I talked about this in my last talk, but I think it's a good example to bring up again, which is the Sharia, the decision to promulgate Sharia law in Brunei in 2014. I think it was 2014 or 2015. Brunei diplomats were going to, their Western counterparts and saying, look, like these laws are not going to get carried out. It's not going to happen. And that's true, and that's actually the case for Sharia law. Even if it's correctly, even if like Sharia law was being applied exactly as God and the Prophet intended it, the punishment should not take place. But what bothers Western kind of reading publics about the law in Brunei that says that homosexuality or homosexual sex is going to be punished by stoning or death? What bothers is it if you tell them this is never going to happen? Is that good enough? No. One, they don't think that homosexuality should be taboo or condemned. Two, they don't think any sexual relationship between consenting adults should be the business of governments to condemn or approve of, right? So that's like a statement of value. I mean, that's a statement of value. And if I'm a Muslim, like I can say that as a Muslim, I don't agree with that. I do think that there are certain sexual relationships that are appropriate and certain sexual relationships that are not appropriate. And if I were to create in my own mind a dream government that would be encouraging certain things in populations and discouraging other things, that government would discourage certain kinds of sexual relationships and encourage others. So what really is happening here is pressures and forces to get people to make certain statements about their identities and about their beliefs about what is ultimately appropriate in the world, not about whether or not a certain legal system is really going to have this punishment or not.
So we're going to have to stop there because I think your driver's going to do my head in a bit. I just want to make a couple of announcements very quickly. Number one, I just want to say that the idea of this talk and the topics that we've discussed is to bring these discussions to a more academic space, because otherwise a lot of times you see people online without knowledge about what the Sharia really means, trying to monopolize the discourse, and it causes a lot of problems. And we've seen that, for example, like the doctor mentioned, ISIS and things like that, a misunderstanding of the Sharia, and this is our attempt to take back the narrative from the extremists, and a lot of the things here obviously are very theoretical. The doctor mentioned the idea of the Crimean War, late Ottoman period. On that note, next week we do have a lecture on Sunday, inshallah. Do check out the Creamer website, the Life and Times of Sultan Abdul Hamid II.
Who's giving the lecture?
Dr. Yaqub Ahmed.
Oh, he's terrific. He's a really knowledgeable guy. Actually, you can ask him some of the things he's very honest and forthright.
When he finished his lecture series with us, he got a standing ovation. He was so happy.
Well, I didn't get it.
Impending. But yeah, so he'll be coming next week. He's one of the most amazing professors I've ever had, after Dr. Jonathan Brown, obviously.
No, he's better than me.
He's so charismatic, and he's British, so that helps. So he'll be coming, inshallah, next week to deliver a lecture for us. So I just finish off now by thanking Professor Jonathan Brown for honouring us with his presence. So we pray for khair for him and his travels and his journey and his family and in his efforts to defend the religion of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we hope that he continues, and we hope inshallah that we can bring him over again to our blessed town, or he makes it blessed by his presence, I hope.
Thank you very much.
And I thank all of you for attending. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.